And happening today, we could see some political drama unfolding in a federal courthouse here in Georgia. It's the start of a trial to determine whether a conservative group violated the Voting Rights Act by intimidating voters.
Atlanta News First, Rebecca Schramm is joining us live right now. Rebecca, that lawsuit was first filed nearly 3 years ago.
It was, Gervier, and Don, good morning to you. Let's take you back to the end of 2020. The political stakes were high leading up to the U.S. Senate runoff here in Georgia. Well, a Texas-based conservative group called True the Vote announced it was challenging the eligibility of more than 360,000 Georgia voters. Well, soon afterward, a liberal voting rights group called Fair Fight, which was founded by Democrat Stacey Abrams, filed a lawsuit saying the conservative group was intimidating voters by recruiting volunteers to monitor ballots cast at the polls and offering up to $1 million to pay the legal expenses of anyone who has to go to court to challenge a voter's eligibility. The defendants in this lawsuit, True the Vote, argue that Georgia law allows citizens to question the voting eligibility of their neighbors. Whatever the outcome of this lawsuit, it will affect future eligibility challenges. If the judge sides with the conservative group, more like-minded groups might be inspired to do mass voter challenges. If the judge sides with the liberal group, people might think twice about doing so. The trial is expected to get underway today in federal court in Gainesville. We will monitor it and we'll let you know the outcome. Live in Atlanta, Rebecca Schramm, Atlanta News First.